Hello, my dear students. In the midst of lockdown, let us take some few classes, the uncovered part. Today, I'm going to give lecture on disaster management cycle. I do understand your internet problem. That is why I will be speaking only for about 5 to 10 minutes. Listen carefully. I might go very quick. I will present you through a PowerPoint. Yes, this is our topic today, disaster management cycle. And before going to that, this is actually cycle. And before going to that, let us know the definitions. What is disaster management? So it is an applied science. And applied science is actually a practical science. What are the things? What are the steps needed to uh, required for managing a kind of disaster? So you just go to the definition and applied science, which seeks by the systematic observation and analysis of disaster to improve measures relating to prevention, mitigation, preparedness, emergency response, and recovery. So this is our disaster management cycle. You have four stages only. The first stage is known as preparedness. The second stage is known as response. The third stage is known as recovery. Mitigation. See, this is a disaster management cycle. You see, they are all interrelated together. Preparation is a stage before a disaster. Lots of things needs to be prepared because we do not know what kind of disaster will take place. A nation which really is equipped enough, well prepared enough, they will not face much of disaster. Then you come response. Response is actually a field work. Then you comes the recovery. Recovery is actually after a disaster. Healing and repair and reconstruction. Then you comes the mitigations. What are the steps to reduce disaster or a lesson learned? So preparedness. So preparedness is actually before a disaster. Any nations needs to prepare well enough. You see a kind of well meeting at a national level, at a international level, or state level, or community level. Different kinds of disaster rescue teams are formed. NGOs like NCC, NSS. These are all part of this, and there is also a national disaster management team is also there at national level. Now, going to the definition, preparedness is usually regarded as comprising measures which enable government, organization, communities, individual response rapidly, effectively to the disaster situation. Second comes the response. See, response is actually when a disaster has already happened. Now, the prepared team, they need to go and respond. They need to, after a disaster occur, many things, lots of life loss and property, still many people can be stranded there, still lives can be saved. That is responding quickly. You see the pictures here with helicopters, and they're trying to rescue. Now response, this you all know, implementation, survey, evacuation measures, provisions, food, shelter, medical assistance, even so necessary. You see how they are working at the field to rescue, mass evacuation, search and rescue, security, food and water, maintenance of law and order. The third part is recovery. Recovery is actually after a disaster, following a disaster. We need to give some temporary housing claims because lots of house being damaged. If it is a pandemic, then they need some what you call hospitals, grants, medical care. You see, recovery is the process by which communities and the nations assisted in returning to their proper level of functionings and following a disaster. Restoration, these are the three processes. reconstructions and rehabilitations. I hope you all of you understand this word. Now this house is being damaged and they are being what you call rehabilitated here, or they were given a good settlement. Now mitigation is actually after recoveries and everything, the lesson learned from a disaster. What places cause lots of havoc, all these things measures need to be learned. Then after learning we need to understand which parts are more vulnerable, which parts are more risks. You see all those for example, if it is a pandemic, we need to spray lots of disinfectants powder through public education. You just go to the definitions. Actions within this segment usually takes the form of specific program intended to reduce the effect of disaster on a development community, building codes which can reduce damage loss in the event of earthquakes, cyclones. Not only that, pandemic also as being the category of mitigations. Mitigation measures this reducing hazards, reducing vulnerability, risk analysis, then or also preventive measures. What steps that we can take and we can prevent. So all these things are the components of mitigation cycles. If so many testing kits are there, what you call survival kits. Now these are the principles of disaster management, risks and hazards assessment. We need to do planning, we need to do organization, we need to do resource utilization, proper resource. What are the resources being there? Equipments or any of the food resources. Need for specialist person, research scientists, experts. All these things are, and training also needs to be imparted to the people. Now disaster will always happen. It is on the basis of resilience. We cannot wait for a disaster. It is a natural process. So a country needs to prepare itself. So resilience is a factor which adapt any kind of disaster occurs, and nations or a country, how far quickly they can come up from that disaster. Now you see a different kind of pandemic is going on, and how the nations are protecting themselves. And nations which has not proper strategy, uh, they're finding lots of unspread, uncontrollable measures. So thank you. Study well. Bye.